Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the iPad mini 7 and compare it against the iPad Air 11-inch model, aka the M2 iPad Air, and see which particular iPad is a better one for you. Now, I will definitely tell you when it comes down to both of these iPads, they're both very good. I like them a lot. If you're in the market and you're trying to figure out the best one between both, I would probably say an iPad like the M2, iPad Air, is probably the better one for the everyday average person. That one's probably going to be giving you more capability, more just quality for a tablet, and I think that would probably be the one I'd recommend a majority of people to buy. But the iPad mini 7 is slightly cheaper, and that might be a little bit of a better tablet to go and pick up for some people. So if you want to pick up either one of these iPads, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there, and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these particular tablets. On the front side of the iPad Air, you're getting either an 11-inch model or a 13-inch model. So it just depends on which one you're getting. Again, keep in mind, if you're getting the more expensive one, that one is going to be, if you're going to get the bigger one, that's going to have a more expensive panel. So keep that in mind. But beyond both, I think both look very, very solid. So with the iPad Air 2, the iPad Air M2 model, the 11-inch, iPad screen on the front is a liquid retina LCD panel. It's a good looking panel for the most part. Never really had too many complaints about here with these types of device panels for the most part. Now, a big thing to keep in mind here is when you're looking at this type of panel, I think it still looks like a very good device. It's true tone anti-reflective coating. It is a bigger size panel, which again, I personally prefer, but some people may not prefer it. So that is always something interesting to kind of keep in mind there. But I still think it's a very nice looking tablet for the most part. And I definitely do think it's a very good looking display. With something like the iPad mini 7, this one is giving you a smaller 8.3-inch liquid retina display. So this one is slightly smaller, so just kind of keep that in mind at the end of the day. That one is a slightly smaller panel when it comes down to it, but it still is a pretty good display. I don't think it's the biggest difference ever coming from the iPad mini 6, but it's still a good looking display, bezel around it for the most part, but nothing super crazy. And I do think it's an overall good looking type of tablet on both of these. Now you're both getting flat sides on both, which again is always nice to have. I love having flat sides, and you're essentially getting that type of capability on both these particular tablets. You're both getting USB Type-C ports on the bottom of both these as well, which again, that in and of itself is another really, really nice thing to have too. So if you're going to go through and get a tablet that looks like this, well, having that type of tablet from that particular, standpoint, I think is really nice. On the backside, you're getting standard aluminum backs on both of these things, which, like I stated before, is super nice to have, and I think that in and of itself is a very, very nice thing to have when it comes down to it. So having a tablet that performs at this level, that performs that well on the back of both these, especially with them having more similarity than differences, I think it's a kind of like a nice thing, right? I think that in and of itself is a super nice thing going on for this type of tablet. Is it perfect? No, but I do think from the exterior, if you're just wanting the smaller type of tablet, well, then I think you have a choice when it kind of comes down to it. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there for the most part. Now, when it comes down to the whole entire, the price tag standpoint, the iPad Air M2 model is $799 for the Wi-Fi model. With the iPad mini 7, this one is $679 for the Wi-Fi model. So there's about $120 difference between these two particular models. So I do think this in and of itself is another very interesting thing here. Like if you're going to go through and pick up an iPad, having that type of difference from the price tag standpoint, I think is actually a very, very big thing, because if you are wanting the cheaper one, well, then it's probably going to be something like the iPad, mini 7 when it kind of comes down to it. But the iPad Air, M2 model, it is giving you, although it's more expensive, it is giving you a little bit of a better type of capability when it comes to that, price tag standpoint, especially when it comes down to the build, you're getting a bigger display and everything. So some people may actually prefer that. So when it comes down to that side as well, that kind of covers it up there a little bit. Now, when it comes down to the cameras, there's a lot of overlap here. There is basically almost the same exact thing going on for both these particular tablets when it kind of comes down to it. So for starters, number one, a very, very big thing to keep in mind here is the fact that between both these particular tablets, both 12 megapixel wide angle cameras on the back, and both can do 4K video. They both are also giving you essentially 12 megapixel front facing cameras with, center stage, and they're ultra wide cameras as well. So just that in and of itself, again, gives you a lot of capability here. And there is a lot of overlap when it kind of comes down to it. If you're going to go through and pick up either one of these particular tablets, like I mentioned before, there is definitely a lot of overlap here, and that's just kind of what ends up happening. So I would probably say when it comes down to that, the camera standpoint, You're both able to film basically the same resolutions. You're both able to do kind of the same thing when it kind of comes down to it. So there really isn't like this big massive difference when it comes down to, things from that particular perspective, I would say. But there still is a lot of capability between both. And I definitely do like both these tablets when it kind of comes down to it. It just so happens that a tablet like the iPad Air M2 model might be a little bit better here and there, but I'd probably still say for the most part, you're getting a lot of good stuff when it comes down to both anyways. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there for the most part. Now, on top of that, when it comes down to the other side of things, right, when it comes down to how long these tablets are going to last, I would probably say when it comes down to it, a tablet like the iPad Air M2 model is probably going to be the one I would probably say that's going to last a longer period of time, right? Like I'm not 100% too sure which one's going to last a longer time here, but if I had to kind of guess, I would probably go off with the assumption that the iPad Air M2 model could be the one that's going to last a little bit longer because the iPad mini 7 is just giving you that A17 Pro chip. Like, the A17 Pro chip is going to last as long as something as like the iPhone 15 Pro, whereas on the M2 model, that's more of a desktop level chipset. So both are still going to be lasting for many more years, and there also could be a chance where the iPad Air M2 model may end up lasting like, less than the iPad mini 7. We really don't know, like 100% sure, but that is just one of those things that we're going to have to keep an eye out for like in the future. So from that side as well, that kind of covers it up there a little bit too. Now on top of that, another very big thing to kind of keep in mind here too is the fact that with something like the iPad, mini 7, because it is smaller, it's essentially going to be giving you, less battery life that we could presume than the iPad Air M2 model. So that's just another thing. Again, it's not the biggest deal in the world, but that could be one area that you might notice that with something like the iPad Air M2 model, that could be giving you overall better battery life. So that could be just another advantage for that type of tablet when it kind of comes down to it as well. So especially when it comes down to the performance side, if I'm looking at both these particular iPads, you're definitely going to be getting a very good performing tablet on both these things. Both of these are giving you Apple Intelligence. Both of these are giving you large amounts of RAM. So from that side as well, you're not really missing out on like an insane amount of things here. But I would definitely tell you if you're going to go through and pick up one from the performance side, because the iPad Air M2 model has that M2 chipset, that is a desktop level chipset that the thing has inside of it. Like there's M2 MacBook Pros, there's M2 iMacs. So because of that chipset is just so powerful that it makes a lot of sense to probably go ahead and buy something like that. So in my opinion, when I'm looking at something like that, that is probably the one that I look at as probably being the overall better performing tablet. But the iPad mini 7, for a majority of things that you're probably going to do with it, is going to be very, very fast as well. Like you're not going to look at the iPad, mini 7 and like wish you had the iPad Air M2 model and vice versa. It just so happens that the iPad Air M2 model is faster, but beyond that, it's not like the biggest deal in the world anyways. So overall, to kind of sum up this whole entire comparison, what I'll tell you is that if you have all the money in the world, I think the M2 iPad Air is probably the better one when it comes down to it. That's the one that I look at as probably being the better one for every single person out there. But if you want to stay a little bit on a budget, if you don't want to spend too much money, you can always buy the iPad mini 7. That's always a really good option. Or you can always go through and buy a used iPad Air M2 model or a used iPad mini 6. Or a used M1 iPad, if you want to go and buy those ones. I think those are very good options as well, but you generally can't go wrong with either one. It just so happens like which one do you prefer on the size front. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.